is the WrestleBread Podcast, bringing you the latest news, recaps, and analysis of AEW and WWE. Get the unique perspective from a wrestling fan of over 25 years. Here's your host, Jaydee.
What's going on, guys? This is Jaydee here, and this is episode 82 of the WrestleBread Podcast. So this weekend, we have Full Gear. We had a very good AEW Dynamite. We had a good NXT as well. And we also have SmackDown coming out tonight. So getting into a bit of news, we have heard that there will be a Stone Cold documentary. The people who did Michael Jordan's The Last Dance will be behind this, which I'm all for. I would love to hear the stories behind Stone Cold's career, hearing it coming from him, hearing it coming from other people, because he had like a crazy career, and I liked what they did very too with the Undertaker. How the Undertaker has been the Undertaker for so long, and rarely did we get to hear any type of backstage stories or anything about his career. So what we're getting right now is pretty good. So I can't wait to see Stone Cold's documentary. I hope they do one for The Rock as well. A lot of the greats that have gone through the years to kind of sit down and hear stories and, you know, learn things about our favorite wrestlers that we never heard before as well. We also heard that Survivor Series will be official announcement of the retirement of The Undertaker, which would make sense because it is the 30th anniversary of his debut in WWE. And I know a lot of people are like, well, you know, this is probably like the 10th time that we have heard about a retirement from The Undertaker. But I think with all these specials, The Undertaker coming out of his shell and, you know, talking out of character and everything, I really think that this is the last one. For his sake and his health, as much as Undertaker fan I am, I really don't want to see him get injured, and I don't want us to remember him, that his legacy would be tarnished because he doesn't know when to stop. So I'm sad that, you know, we came to this point of his career, of his legacy, that we have to, you know, say goodbye to his wrestling career and see him. And I guess, you know, he definitely would be a big help backstage to help out with the next generation, especially if he were to help out with the talent in NXT, definitely with character development. I mean, the person who could be such an expert of teaching people how to stick to a gimmick, how to be creative with a gimmick, it would definitely be The Undertaker. I'm hoping that that's what he's planning to do, that he's going to I know he's dying to sit home and be with family and things like that, but at least have like a Zoom class or something or, you know, help out the next generation with character development. Because I think that's one of the biggest things that is missing with a lot of the NXT wrestlers when they come up to Raw or SmackDown. While NXT, it concentrates on the talent that's in the ring and not so much as character development. Once they go to the main roster, it's all about character development. It's all about who you are outside the ring and how you can translate that in the ring. I had spoken about with Shayna Baszler versus Asuka. A lot of us thought that Shayna Baszler was going to win the title when it was Asuka who won the title, because Asuka is more of a character that fits the brand for WWE versus, you know, Shayna Baszler being, you know, straight up a kick-ass type of woman who, you know, gets down in the ring. So I'm hoping that The Undertaker will, you know, lend his knowledge, because he has a lot of knowledge. He has a lot of experience that would definitely be a letdown if he didn't use it to help other people. So getting into the highlights this week, we are starting out with NXT. We had started this show out with Amber Moon versus Dakota Kai. And I had said this before, I'm pretty interested in this feud. I think that this may go on to War Games, like they did last year where they had a female version of War Games. I think that they should definitely do a female version of the War Games again this year. I feel that we're going to have Io Shirai, Shotzi Blackheart, maybe Toni Storm, Amber Moon in one corner, and then probably Candice LeRae. Who else? Candice LeRae, Dakota Kai, Raquel, and maybe even Rhea Ripley in the other end. And I know that Rhea Ripley and Raquel aren't getting along, but I know that Rhea wants to go after that women's championship title. Or we may take out the women championship title all out together and have Io Shirai and Rhea Ripley face each other for the championship at War Games and then replace them with someone else as well. But this is a very interesting matchup, like I had said. Amber Moon, I'm very happy that she's back in NXT because, like I had said, she doesn't have that character development. She's very good in the ring, but it feels like that she was lost on the main character. So with this match, Raquel definitely got a little bit of help. Was helping Dakota Kai, and Dakota Kai ended up getting the win. So this will definitely continue on between these women, and I can't wait. After that, we had Cameron Grimes versus Kushida. I was interested on the fallout of what happened with Cameron Grimes, and he was definitely freaked out because there was a referee who was in the House of Horrors who turned into a zombie, and when Cameron Grimes saw him, he definitely freaked out. So he definitely has the character development that WWE on the main roster really likes. I wasn't really into Cameron Grimes beforehand. I really didn't know who he was in the ring, but once he did this House of Horrors, it definitely sticks to him. He definitely has the personality to bring on a little bit of comedy. And I know a lot of people aren't fans of having comedy in wrestling. Sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes, yes, it's not appropriate. But you will have those type of people who are born to do it. I mean, look at R-Truth. R-Truth is a comedic wrestler. Yes, I know we would love to see him get serious and go after the title from some time. Santino Marella is another one as well. But there are people who are really good at being comedic. And sometimes it could translate to them getting an opportunity down the road as well. So Kushida had Grimes in the hoverboard lock, and the referee of that match took a pretty bad bump and was out. And then we had the referee who was the zombie in the House of Horrors come in. Cameron Grimes looked at him and was like, "Oh no," and just started tapping away. So it was a pretty funny moment. But definitely, I think I'm more interested in Cameron Grimes now than I was before. After that, we got introduced to the Kings of NXT with Pat McAfee, Pete Dunne, Oney Larkin, and Danny Burch. I love Pat McAfee and how much of a heel he is right now. He is definitely living it up. And it's very interesting. This feud between them and Undisputed Era is very interesting because the Undisputed Era were heels at one point. And a lot of the things that had happened to Pete Dunne, Larkin, and Burch were caused by the Undisputed Era. And now we're getting the flip side. And now we have Pat McAfee, who is the heel, using people who were wronged by the Undisputed Era to kind of get their revenge to the Undisputed Era. So it's something I had said where the bullies are getting people are getting revenge on the bully, but the bully has, turned good and, got redeemed and things like that. So you're kind of put in a spot where you feel bad for the Undisputed Era, but then you really think about it and it's like, yeah, they kind of deserve it right now. Pat McAfee, I know that I'm interested because I think this is going to lead to, of course, a War Games match. And it just blows my mind if that's where it's going to go. Because like I said, normally celebrities, they like to kind of be guarded. They don't want to go full out inside the ring. I always think of Tyson Fury and a lot of other celebrities that have came through, in wrestling matches where it feels like it's just a check off the bucket list. And I'm kind of excited of what Pat McAfee might do I know that he sat there and trolled and said he only had 2 weeks of training, even though he is friends with Baron Corbin, so he knew that he got training a lot more. But now he's around Pete Dunne, Larkin and Birch, and I can only imagine what this matchup is going to bring out of Pat McAfee. If he does a crazy spot, it's going to really blow my mind. I mean, it's not that often that celebrities are willing to put themselves out there and possibly get injured just for, a really good spot. There was this part where the Kings of NXT, quote unquote, were out in the parking lot, and Killian Dane came out and tried to attack them. Pete Dunne had Killian Dane inside the car. The car door was open, and Pete Dunne kicked the door to injure Killian Dane, and Pat McAfee had this look on his face. He was like, wow. He was like, that's a little bit too much, but I love it. He said, but we're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. So Pat McAfee definitely getting into this like asshole rich type of heel. It definitely works. So after this, we have the match that I don't know how many heart attacks have caused with this matchup, but we had Shotzi Blackheart versus Toni Storm. A matchup that I didn't know we were going to get, a matchup that I didn't know that we really needed, and a matchup that I would like to see again. And these two women, of course, Shotzi Blackheart has a full list of new fans because of her work at Halloween Havoc, and then Toni Storm just breaking all the hearts of everyone when she came over from NXT UK. So now we have the storyline of Shotzi Blackheart's tank was taken. We don't know who did it. And Candice LeRae comes onto the screen and mentions and shows that she is the one that is behind the tank. Toni Storm kind of took advantage of that, rolled her up for a 3 count, and Toni Storm won the match. Afterwards, Candice LeRae comes back on the screen, and she got into a car and runs over Shotzi Blackheart's tank with the truck. And Shotzi Blackheart screamed and cried. Personally, it got a little bit too much because it did go on for so long and everything. And I know that the tank has a sentimental value to her because her brother, I believe it is in the military. So I understand her being upset. But she was just crying and devastated and things like that. And you see Toni Storm kind of console her and kind of feel a little bit bad that she kind of took advantage of the moment. Like I said, I think that this will lead to a War Games match with Shotzi Blackheart in it. And this may lead to another matchup between Shotzi Blackheart and Toni Storm, because Shotzi can actually say, hey, you took advantage when I was distracted and you really didn't get an actual win. But this was a good match, and I liked the character development that we're getting out of Shotzi Blackheart. When I first saw her, I knew that she was going to be a star. But she's definitely coming into her own, especially, what she's been doing even with the Halloween Havoc. So then we get Tommaso Ciampa versus Velveteen Dream. Tommaso Ciampa coming out with the mask and the hood. I mean, I love his look. I still love his theme music. I rock out to it every time I hear it. I'm not quite sure what we're doing with Velveteen Dream. He has the cast. We're working on the cast and everything like that. But I don't know what the hell is he wearing? What are we doing with the hair? I thought he was going to be like a mini Prince 2.0 type of situation. But ever since his injury and then of course the allegations, it hasn't really been the same since. But Tommaso Ciampa defeats Velveteen Dream. I'm all for Tommaso Ciampa kicking Velveteen Dream's ass, but I don't know where this is going to go from here. Tommaso Ciampa definitely showing more aggression because his thing is that NXT is not the way it used to be. And he wants to get NXT back to that nitty gritty that we all had loved, especially back when the fans were there as well. Overall, NXT was a pretty good show. And this was a pretty good fallout for what happened with Halloween Havoc. So now we're getting into AEW Dynamite. This is the go-home show before we get to Full Gear. Starting out, we had the matchup of Ortiz and Sammy Guevara versus MJF and Wardlow. Chris Jericho was calling MJF soft before the matchup, basically talking crap about him, wanting MJF to get more aggressive, get more dominant and everything like that. And this matchup, it was pretty good. We had Sammy Guevara getting taken out by Matt Hardy, because we have that matchup coming up with Full Gear. MJF and Wardlow wins the match because MJF started to get more and more aggressive as the match goes on. After the match, MJF had ambushed Jericho, who was, at the announce table. And you see Chris Jericho had a smile on his face because that's exactly what he wanted MJF to do. He wanted MJF to get, show some type of intensity, some type of, grit about him as well. This makes things a little more exciting leading into their matchup at Full Gear, kind of giving MJF a bit of momentum going into the matchup as well. We also had the Young Bucks going against Private Party at AEW Dynamite. Of course, the Young Bucks would win this match just to get more momentum going into their matchup at Full Gear as well. After the match, FTR did come into the ring and attacked the Young Bucks, and then tried to injure Matt Hardy once again. The Hangman Page came into the ring to try to help out the Young Bucks, and then we had Kenny Omega who came in to help out the Young Bucks as well. And we had a stare down between them two to kind of, feud their matchup going into Full Gear as well. Speaking of Kenny Omega and Hangman Page, we also had backstage interviews that was done. Jon Moxley was hilarious because he was in a house with a dog and he was like, yeah, that's not even my house. That's not even my dog. And as he was getting interviewed, he was like, basically so cocky. He was like, yeah, I'm going to win this. I'm very good at tournaments. Pretty much like there's no point in me practicing or even worrying about things. And with Hangman Page, of course, he had a drink in his hand. And Jim Ross was like, are you nervous? And he was like, no. And then Jim Ross was like, I think you are nervous. I think you're scared. You're using the alcohol to kind of hide your feelings. And you see the look on Hangman Page face kind of change. And he goes, all right, well, maybe, maybe I am nervous. And so it was pretty funny because then Jim Ross asked Hangman Page, how could he win this match, going up against Kenny Omega? And Hangman Page shrugs his shoulders and goes, well, I know how to reverse all his moves. So, and I was like, well, that's a good rebuttal. If you know how to reverse someone's moves, how can they win the match if you're going to constantly hit that square button? I'm interested in this matchup between Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. Definitely is going to be a hard-hitting type of matchup, as we have seen from these two guys before. Next up, we have definitely the segment of the night, Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley promo. Eddie Kingston was out in the ring first, talking about how he's going to win this, that, and the third. And then Jon Moxley comes out, and that's when shit gets real. Definitely it made me feel like I was watching two people who's about to fight, whether you live in the street, in the hood, or whatever. When someone gets nose to nose with someone, it's about to be a fight. It got real. And Eddie Kingston getting into Jon Moxley's face, and he was like, this Sunday I'm going to ruin you, which I completely laughed because I heard that line plenty of times when someone's about to fight. And he was like, I told my mom the reason why she doesn't have a grandchild is because of this. And he pointed to the belt and he said, the reason why you don't have a daughter-in-law is because of this. And he pointed to the belt and he was like, this is all we got. This is all that matters to me and you have it. So I'm going to have to, defeat you. And then Jon Moxley started cutting his promo and he was talking about how, I forgot what he was saying because then Eddie Kingston goes, who cares? Who cares? Who cares? And Jon Moxley was like, I was happy when he got signed. And Eddie Kingston was like, no, you weren't. You weren't happy when I got signed. And then that's when Jon Moxley brought up the mom. It was like, I made a promise to your mom, when I was at the kitchen table, and you see Eddie Kingston like, don't bring my mom into this. And of course he says mom's name. Eddie Kingston turns his back to him and, had his head up, just straight up type of, straight. It was so real, the interaction between them two. And it definitely was a disservice to this feud because now everyone is excited to see this feud. And I'm saying here, like, they fought each other before. And this is the first time that I heard that they had this history that goes back to when they were younger. And Jon Moxley know Eddie Kingston's mom and stuff like that. And then I don't know why we didn't get this type of storyline from the get-go. It would have made this feud definitely something to see. Similar to Roman Reigns and Jey Uso. You bring out that history between these two. So you'd be like, oh, snap, And it'll make you feel like Eddie Kingston has a shot at the title. But now that we get this last minute, it kind of feels like the feud didn't get as much attention and as big as a build as it definitely deserves. There's another point too. We're not paying $10 for Full Gear. We're paying $40-$50 for this pay-per-view. And so AEW really has to grind and really has to work hard to convince people to spend that much money on a pay-per-view event when we're used to paying $10 a month or even getting, the 30-day free trial, or even for those of people, something I used to do was you would sign up with one email address, cancel, and sign up with a different email address. That way you get the 30 days free multiple times, but that's between me and you. But yeah, I don't know why AEW didn't think of doing this from the get-go, just so each week, we want to tune in to AEW Dynamite to find out what's going on next between Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. Because both of them are pretty good on the mic. Especially Eddie Kingston is gold on the mic. So they should have definitely had this type of promo, happen weeks ago. Instead of the narrative being Eddie Kingston was never eliminated from that battle royale. Instead, it should have been, two people who grew up together, childhood friends, Jon Moxley making promises to the mom and everything, and that he has to break it. I think that should have been a narrative from the get-go. After that, we had Red Velvet versus Nyla Rose, and we had the champion, Shida, on the sideline. And I don't know why, ever since she won the title, she definitely had been put on the back burner. And one thing that AEW definitely is so weak at is the women's division. They definitely need, I don't know what it is. I don't know if they don't trust the women to kind of do it on their own. I don't know if they don't give them enough time. I don't know if it's because Brandy's in charge and she's inserting herself into storylines and, making herself, not really relevant, but, inserting herself and making herself like a top star in her own division, that they're not giving the actual women a shot. The biggest mistake that they made with the women's division so far is putting that tournament on YouTube instead of putting it on AEW Dynamite, having the finals at a pay-per-view event, just so we can say, oh, wow. Because looking at this match, we all know Nyla Rose, we all know Vicky Guerrero, but it's like, why do I care about Red Velvet? If I never watch AEW Dynamite, I wouldn't know who Red Velvet is, and so her coming in, it's like, why do I care about Red Velvet? So maybe AEW should do what they do, when they were doing the Road 2 series on the YouTube, and we get to know these women. We have this AEW Heels thing that they put out, which is, it's a good idea. The things that you get for the membership fee definitely pays for itself, but they should definitely also do a series that they can feature a little bit of on AEW Dynamite, getting to know the women, getting to know them backstage, like many documentaries, so that we can care about these women in the division. And then the main event is Cody Rhodes, who got his name back, Cody Rhodes and the Gun Club versus the Dark Order. So, of course, Cody Rhodes and the Gun Club won this match. I think the Dark Order definitely need these wins, especially with the absence of Brody Lee. We had Darby Allin in the stands watching, very similar to Sting type of situation. And after the match, Cody grabbed the mic and he cut a promo about Darby, saying about him being an AEW superstar. And he mentioned how Darby needs to quit lying and saying that TNT doesn't want him to be a champion. And Cody said, if I wasn't the champion, you would definitely be the champion. But I am the champion, so I have to defeat you. But you're definitely a star. And so that kind of gives you a little bit of, okay, something to go into Full Gear with. But I feel as though this should not have been the main event. Like, I get that you wanted to end with the go home. You want to end the go home show with a look at the TNT championship, but I think the main event should have definitely have been the promo between Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley. So now let me get into the predictions for Full Gear here. So we have a pre-show. We have for the NWA World Women's Championship, we have Serena Deeb versus Allysin Kay. A lot of people are wondering where Thunder Rosa is going, whether she's going to AEW, if she may go to Impact or NXT or WWE. My thing is, and I have said this on the Clark Street Wrestling podcast, WWE doesn't need Thunder Rosa because they have too many women on their main roster. And I have said it before that WWE has an issue where they cannot concentrate on more than one women's storyline. So if Thunder Rosa goes to Raw, SmackDown, she'll kind of get lost in the sauce. NXT doesn't need her either because they have enough women and they have enough star power that they don't really need Thunder Rosa. Yeah, we'll get a lot of good matchups, a lot of great matchups that we'll definitely want to see when it comes to Thunder Rosa and the women in NXT. But in my opinion, AEW needs Thunder Rosa. A lot of people said that the match between Thunder Rosa and Shida was one of the best women's matches that they've seen in AEW Dynamite. And the fact that they definitely need some type of star power, a veteran in the locker room to help out these women. Because a lot of these women, they haven't really worked with, TV like that. They haven't really had as much experience in the ring. And I think Thunder Rosa can definitely help them out. Thunder Rosa can definitely set up a lot of good matchups. I mean, her and Shida again, her and Nyla Rose. It's a lot of matchups there that Thunder Rosa can definitely help out. And she can definitely be that star power that AEW needs in their women's division. So that's my 2 cents on Thunder Rosa. But for this matchup here, going back for the NWA World Women's Championship, I'm going to have Serena retain. So next we have the singles matchup, Orange Cassidy versus John Silver. I like John Silver from the Dark Order. He's hilarious on the Being the Elite YouTube series. But I know that this is all about Orange Cassidy, and I know that Orange Cassidy is going to win this matchup. Next up, we have Chris Jericho versus MJF. If MJF wins, he will be allowed to join the Inner Circle. I'm going to go with MJF here. I think he's going to join the Inner Circle, and I think eventually he's going to break off, of course, and this will either lead to a longer feud with Chris Jericho, even though we're getting this matchup first and then getting into the Inner Circle. I thought that they would let MJF enter the Inner Circle, cause a bit of chaos, and then it would lead to a match between him and Chris Jericho. But I'm going to go with MJF to win on this one. After that, we have for the AEW Women's World Championship, we have Hikaru Shida versus Nyla Rose. I'm going to go with Nyla Rose here. I know I love Shida, I really do, but ever since she won the championship, they really didn't have anything for her. At least with Nyla Rose, she can definitely kind of have an open challenge maybe, or she can definitely be featured on AEW Dynamite a lot more. Kind of, I guess, a reset or something like that. Maybe this is setting up for Thunder Rosa to kind of come in and go against Shida and kind of have this feud between them two to be non-title. After that, we have the Elite Deletion match, Matt Hardy versus Sammy Guevara. So I'm split on this one. I don't know what this is going to be, if this is a cinematic match that we're going to have very similar to what we saw in TNA and in WWE, or if this is some type of hardcore matchup they're going to do backstage. If it is cinematic, it definitely would be Matt Hardy winning. Even though Matt Hardy doesn't need this win. He doesn't. Sammy Guevara definitely needs this win. If it's like a backstage area or something like that, I'm going to go with Sammy Guevara. I know that is kind of cheating, but I'm going to go with Sammy Guevara on this one, ultimately, because I think he definitely needs the win. After that, we have for the Tag Team Championship, FTR versus the Young Bucks. If the Young Bucks lose, they will never challenge for the AEW World Tag Team Championship again, which I wish they didn't do this stipulation, and I wish that they didn't have such a small build for this matchup. I felt as though this should have been just a regular tag team match, and FTR wins, and then we go into a longer feud between these two, because we only got, 2 weeks worth of build for this matchup after every wrestling fan wanting this matchup between FTR and the Young Bucks for years. And now that we finally get it, it feels like it's like a bit on the back burner, and it doesn't feel as important as it should have been. I'm going to go with the Young Bucks here on this one because of this stipulation, because who's to believe that the Young Bucks will never challenge for the AEW Tag Team Championship, especially since they never won these belts before. So I'm going to go with the Young Bucks on this one. I think this is going to continue the feud between these two tag teams, and I'm hoping that this will get the build that it actually deserves. After that, for the AEW TNT Championship, Cody Rhodes versus Darby Allin. I'm going to go with Darby on this one. I have a feeling that Cody will retain, and I really hope he doesn't. I know that we still have Brody Lee lurking in the background. Maybe he does a return here, and then they will go against each other with the title. I'm hoping that it doesn't, because this feud between Cody Rhodes and Brody Lee really doesn't need the title for it to be intense. I mean, Brody Lee can definitely sit here and just say Cody Rhodes defeated me and I'm pissed off about it. And it doesn't really need a title for it. And I think that Darby should win this title just so that AEW can finally, put the company into one of their own hands. I always have the complaint with AEW that it feels like the Cody and Friends show with the former WWE superstars. I mean, look at all who's holding the title. We have, besides the women's, we have FTR, Jon Moxley, Cody Rhodes, so I think it's time for them to put the titles into someone else's hands. Even with this tag team title match, the Young Bucks could win this match. So I think it's time for them to put the title in someone's hands and let them be the future of the company. So I'm going to go with Darby on this one. And I hope that he will just let him lead the company. And I know this isn't the big belt, but, let him lead the company. He definitely has a lot of fans. We've seen it when the fans were in the arena. We had a lot of people who wore the face paint and everything. So I'm hoping that that's where the booking is going to go. So I'm not sure which matchup is going to be the main event, because we have the AEW World Championship match, and then we have, of course, what I think will be the matchup of the night. I'm going to go with the match that I think will be the match of the night. This is Hangman Page versus Kenny Omega. The winner will receive a future AEW World Championship match. This is going to be hard-hitting. I'm so happy that we're finally getting the Kenny Omega that I've been waiting for. ever since Kenny Omega came to AEW, it felt like a bit of a shell of who he is in New Japan. And I know that, it's very hard for people who work in New Japan to come over to the United States and still continue that hard-hitting, strong style, stiff type of work that they're known for. Kenny Omega is an example. Asuka's an example. Shinsuke Nakamura is an example. You notice that they're not as hard-hitting as they used to be, especially Shinsuke and Asuka, since they came up from NXT. But Hangman Page is definitely someone who can hang in there with Kenny Omega. So I know this is going to be hard-hitting from both men. I know we're going to be talking about this matchup for a while. Definitely may be the match of the year. I'm going to say that right now. But I'm going to go with Kenny Omega on this one. I like Hangman Page. I definitely do. But I think that Kenny Omega getting this reset and turning into his cleaner gimmick is definitely going to propel him to get his title shot. And potentially go against either Jon Moxley or Eddie Kingston. And I think Kenny Omega is going to win the title. And I know I just said that this is the Cody and Rhodes show and that, look at who's holding the title. But I'm going to make a slight exception here because we're getting the Kenny Omega from New World Japan. And I know that once people kind of see Kenny Omega as he is, I think they're going to tune in a lot more to him, because I think when you see him, and I knew Kenny Omega before he came to AEW. I seen a few of his matches. I saw a few highlights as well. And when I seen the way Kenny Omega wrestles, and when I heard of him coming over to the States to AEW, I was like, all right, we're going to get that Kenny Omega. And I felt like he kind of has been holding back, which he actually admitted. So once we get the cleaner, this new and improved Kenny Omega, I think he's going to get a lot more fans. So now coming into the AEW World Championship match, this is going to be our I Quit match between Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. I don't know how either man is going to say I quit. We see that, Jon Moxley's Jon Moxley. I don't know we're ever going to see him say the words I quit. Eddie Kingston has shown that he has the heart. That he was sitting there telling Jon Moxley, basically, you're going to have to kill me. You're going to have to kill me. I will never quit when it comes to that title. So I don't know how, I have an idea of how this is going to end, but I don't know how it's going to officially end. I'm going to go with Jon Moxley on this one. I think what's going to happen is, I know with what we saw with the I Quit match in that Hell in a Cell match between Roman Reigns and Jey Uso, that what you have to officially say I quit. I think when it comes to AEW, I think you don't have to really say I quit. I think what's going to happen is that Eddie Kingston is going to pass out, and that's how they're going to mark the end of the match. Because I can't see either man saying I quit, and I think this is going to be one of the better ways to do it without diminishing the reputation that we have with Eddie Kingston and Jon Moxley here. I think overall, Full Gear is going to be a very good pay-per-view. I mean, the matches here are definitely one of the best stack of matches that we have seen with AEW so far. So I know that I feel like this is going to be takeover type of pay-per-view event with AEW. So that's it for the WrestleBread podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Shout out to Julianne Rob Bates from Wrestling Court Podcast on TurretOfMinds.com, Keita and Jay from the Keita and Jay Show, Chris from We Talk Next Podcast, Nando and Larry from Half K Podcast, my boys over at Powerbomb Jitsu, and Devin Hafiz from Clark Street Wrestling Podcast. I was on their recent episode. I think it should be coming out soon, so definitely keep an eye out for it. I had a lot of fun talking with those guys. We definitely talked wrestling. Don't know if you guys will see the part where we talked a lot of football after we recorded, but definitely a lot of fun with those guys. So be sure to check them out as well. What's coming up next week? We have SmackDown actually tonight. We have, if Survivor Series is going to continue on with this brand versus brand We have Sasha Banks versus Bayley. Don't know how that's going to turn out. Can Sasha retain her title for once? The bit of a fallout between Aaliyah and Murphy with that kiss that everyone keeps talking about. Who's going to join the SmackDown version of the SmackDown team for Survivor Series? More of Jey Uso and Roman Reigns. And, I can't wait to see what happens with SmackDown. The next episode will be, of course, the review for Full Gear, and then recaps for Raw and SmackDown as well. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Jaydee Talks. That's JAYDE Talks, and follow the podcast as well at WrestleBread on Twitter. Follow on Facebook at WrestleBread Podcast, and on Instagram at WrestleBread_podcast as well. Let me know your review. Let me know your thoughts. Leave a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. And until next time, guys, peace.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Check us out at WrestleBread.com and subscribe to WrestleBread on YouTube for more breaking news and JD's opinions.